Or
This
is now?
conference will now be recorded.
Okay. I want to rearrange the agenda just a little bit, and that's because Robert, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Robert.
Gramuglia.
Gramuglia from our accounting firm is here. We're going to have our audit presentation tonight. We have a packed agenda, so I want to try and keep moving. But with that, we should start. I believe the audit that I got was still not 100% complete. It's listed as a draft, not a final. Robert is
Correct.
new with us. This is the first year. So obviously there's questions and back and forth, and the format's a little different than what we're used to. So Robert, I would appreciate it if you could just give us a little presentation of what we're looking at. Jill, you probably have the document that you can put up.
No problem. What you guys should have, I think what Jill had set out last night, you should have a copy of the financial statements, a copy of the Auditor Communication, and I think there was an administration memo that we had issued as well. And yes, you are correct. What you're looking at today is draft financial statements. I asked Jill just to look over the information to make sure she was okay with everything last night prior to going final in regards to the issuance. She did get back to me that everything was okay, and assuming everything's approved at this meeting, we will go final as early as tomorrow, so you'll have the final reports at that point. This year was a little bit of a challenge, I think, due to COVID, as well as some of the other things, so maybe ran a little later than usual. We've already adjusted the schedule to put you guys as early as as early as February next year. So you should be receiving those audited financial statements much earlier next year going forward, now that you're part of our schedule in that process. What I'd like to start with is the auditor communication. As I always say, that's the most important thing for board of directors or board of trustees to understand, because it really gives an understanding of what happens in an audit, who's responsible for certain things, and basically just summarizes the audit in general. Doesn't talk about numbers, but it just gives you an understanding of the audit process. With that said, back in July 2nd, 2020, we had issued a letter to you. Standards require us to communicate our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards, as well as to go over the planning, scope, and timing of the audit, which we've already discussed in that matter. But basically, the financial statements are your responsibility as an organization. It's your fiduciary responsibility to accept the financial statements in final form per se, and to understand the process from beginning to end. It's our responsibilities to ensure that the financial statements are reported properly in accordance with your standards, which is generally accepted auditing standards. And also to make sure it's reported in the standards that you adopt, which we've reported here under the modified accrual basis of accounting. With that said, the key concept there is we look at reasonable assurance. We can't look at every transaction within the library to ensure that everything is properly reported within the financial statements. But we do look at our knowledge, and we kind of look at risk assessment to say, where do we think the risk is within the organization or within not-for-profit organizations. We always think there's 3 significant areas of risk, and most of it follows in along with the internal controls. Those risks are like the cash receipts area, the cash disbursements area, and the payroll areas. That's the most significant expense you have as an organization. In understanding each one of those processes, we have to understand the internal controls of the organization. We do not give an opinion on the internal control. However, if we come across any weaknesses, we have a requirement to report any what we call significant deficiencies or material weaknesses to you. We did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses to report. I'm happy to say you guys have an excellent internal control structure there and do a very good job of monitoring. We did walkthroughs in each one of those areas through the assistance of Vicki and Jill. And based on our walkthroughs, we can clearly see that your internal controls are functioning as designed within the organization and following your manuals accordingly. I'd like to talk about what you have now in front of you, which is the conclusion part of it. The other letter I was referring to, all those things were the planning side of it. This is really the conclusion, and I'll start with the significant audit findings. They're basically all your accounting policies are disclosed within Note 2 to the financial statements. They were updated. We don't think there's any significant changes to those policies. There were, it was a challenging year for all auditors this year, so there were many new standards that needed to be adopted in the current year without getting into the significance of each standard, but there were 4 separate accounting policies or FASBs that came out in the current year: revenue recognition, contributions, restricted cash. So those were significant, as well as financial instruments. We did do some note disclosure updates for some of those standards, but there were really none of those standards really significantly changed how we reported things within your financial statements themselves. We did have a little change, which I'll talk to as we go forward, but for the most part, nothing had changed in regards to anything related to the standards. Accounting estimates, we have a requirement to disclose to you any significant estimates that are out there. We believe the significant estimate within your financial statements is the estimate of depreciation. In the past, as you may or may not know, that was being done by the auditors per se, and this year we actually did it as well. But this year we've actually created a schedule that management is going to take over going forward, as it's really your fiduciary responsibility. It's our job to really be involved in the audit process, but not necessarily be involved in the preparation of those types of things. So we'll be sitting down with Vicki and Jill to go over that schedule, which I sent over to Jill tonight, so she has, and she can start the process going forward in regards to that. We feel the estimate of depreciation is properly reported and everything is correct within the financial statements themselves. Next page, you'll see there's difficulties. If we had any difficulties, we'd be required to report that to you. We did not. Management, Jill and Vicki were both cooperative and a pleasure to work with from the audit process. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Typically, we'll disclose if we have any significant audit adjustments. There are 2 areas that you may consider audit adjustments, but for this letter purposes, I said there were no significant adjustments. One of the adjustments, of course, was depreciation, but management kind of knew we were going to be doing that, so I don't like to report that in the letter that's an adjustment. It is something that we assisted with and did. And the second thing, which I'll talk about later, we did have a prior period adjustment to the financial statements, and that related to what is classified as donor restrictions, because you have certain grants that you receive that are restricted for purposes. So that really, they're temporary in nature, and as you meet those restrictions that are met by the donors, that we will release those, and then they become unrestricted, meaning part of operations going forward. So the beginning of the year number was not, there were no restricted contributions recorded. We did record them in the current year and restated the beginning of the year fund balance to have a restricted number as well as an unrestricted number, which we'll talk about when we get to the financial statements. Disagreements, we did not have any disagreements in regards to the audit process. Management's representations, as indicated, it is your responsibility to accept the financial statements. We did ask Vicki and Jill to represent to us that all the information that they have presented to us is true and accurate, and everything is done and has been provided by the 2 of them at this point in time. Other audit findings or issues, it's just important for you to know, and I always like to clarify it, we are independent. We don't get involved in your record-keeping transactions. We did assist, like I said, in regards to the depreciation and things of that nature, but we didn't record anything within your system, and we'll be educating management on how they can do those transactions going forward, because we think that's important to maintain that independence, is that we're continue to educate if we're assisting in certain matters. Any questions in the Auditor Communication? Okay. I'll move on now to the financial statements. And just, I'll go right to page 1 of the financial statements. And this is basically our opinion which is basically the only thing that really belongs to Bryan Jacomelli, and it's our representation. We have to give an opinion on the core financial statements, and those core financial statements are the statement of assets, liabilities, and net assets as they reported on the modified cash basis, as well as the related statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net assets, and the statement of functional expenses. We already talked about what your responsibility is in the financial reporting process. We talked about our responsibility to make sure that everything's reported under generally accepted auditing standards and they're in accordance with the modified cash basis. Basically on page 2, I'm happy to say that the opinion, we did give an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get related to the financial statements. And we do believe that everything is reported accurately in all material specs in relation to each one of those statements as of December 31st, 2019. You'll see some that just talks about the basis of accounting. Because you don't follow generally accepted accounting principles, it's on the modified cash basis. There's just states that, but once again, it doesn't change anything in regards to the nature of the opinion. And then it just talks about the changes in accounting principles that we did adopt them in the current year, but there were no significant changes in the reporting to reflect related to those new standards. Page 3, this is your information as it's reported as your assets, liabilities, and net assets as they are as of, I'll wait for Jill to catch up on that one. As of December 31st, 2019. You can see here you have about $955,000 in total current assets. And I want to stop right there and kind of say this. In the past, you would have saw this statement and it was reported in one column. And this year we've now broken it out into 2 columns for what I had indicated before is what we consider there's no restrictions on any of the dollars, and that's reported as without donor restrictions. And column 2 is with donor restrictions, meaning you've got grants or contributions that have certain restrictions out there. And standards say that if you have those types of restrictions, you need to restrict the cash accordingly to restrict your cash to meet the net assets that are part of the restrictions. So overall, you have, as indicated, $955,000 of total cash. $14,467 is restricted by donors. And you have also net property, plant, and equipment. There were no changes or additions to be added to the depreciation schedule in the current year, none that exceeded the scope that you guys have adopted as a policy. So overall, that's about $2.5 million of net property, plant, and equipment. If we take the net property, plant, and equipment of $2.5 million plus the $955,000, we come up with total assets reported by the organization of $3.5 million at the end of the year. Total current liabilities are approximately $281,000. That current liabilities represents, because you're on modified cash and credit cards are considered like cash payments, any transactions that have been incurred prior to 12/31, we report that as a liability as well. That's approximately $1,300, as well as your current portion of your bond payable, which I'm happy to say is your last payment of your bond payable, which is approximately $280,000. So overall, your current liabilities are $281,000. A good ratio to look at your financial statements to see how you're doing in the current year is a current ratio. And current ratio is basically how are your current assets, which is basically how much I'm expected or have in the next 12 months versus your current liabilities, how much do I expect to pay out over the next 12 months? And banks and other organizations like to see you at a minimum of about 1.1 or 1.2 to 1. You're actually at a 3.4 to 1 ratio, which is a very good ratio to be from your current assets to your current liability perspective. And that's only going to go up as you will no longer have the debt from going forward after next year. Total net assets are approximately $3.2 million at the end of the year. As indicated, you have about $14,000 of restricted net assets and about $3.2 million of unrestricted net assets at as of December 31st, 2019. Any questions on the statement of the balance sheet, I'll say. Okay. Next, I'll just talk about quickly the revenue and expenses. Overall, you had a profit in the current year of approximately, up on the page, if you go one page up, there you go. One more down. On page 4, right there. Yep, you can stay right there. On page 4, you have approximately $216,000 of a profit. We refer to that as your change in net assets. So that's your total revenue minus your total expenses. And once again, this schedule is also broken down between what's restricted and what's not restricted. You had approximately $92,000 of restricted contributions that came through in the current year. Majority of that being through the New York State Education Department. So there was about $92,000 of revenue that was restricted. Of that, we released, meaning we met the restrictions of the current year, of $106,000. And so overall, from that column, you have a more releases in the current year of what you received in contributions of approximately $13,000. The prior period adjustment is the number that represents the restricted contributions that were not set up in the prior year, and that was about $28,000 of restricted contributions in the prior year. So overall, that's how we come down to the net of $14,000 that's still left to meet the donor restrictions at the end of the year. In the unrestricted column, you'll see you have about $229,000 of a profit. Most of that's related to your tax revenue, as well as, for the most part, any type of interest income from one year to the next. Overall, net assets end of the year, you have about $3.2 million, $3,225,636 to be exact, which overall increased by that profit, which is approximately $216,000. On the next page, you'll see the expenses. We do break down the expenses by their natural classification. We did ask Jill to go back to break out what is more a programmatic function versus more an administrative function and a fundraising function. She went down and broke down each one of the areas by those activities. And you can see from a program, you have about $1.7 million related to what is spent toward the library, which is your programmatic mission. Administrative-wise, you have about $179,000 total expenses. And the fundraising, you have about $3,000 that's more toward fundraising type efforts that are out there from the library's perspective. Next is the notes to the financial statements. I'm just going to highlight these real quick. You'll see the change in accounting principles that if you wanted some light reading, you can see that those are the standards that changed in the current year and what their implications were in regards to the statements. Once again, there were some significant changes there. On page 9, sorry about that. You'll see the recognition of revenue. And recognition of revenue, there are some additional disclosures. This is just your policies on how you record revenue within the organization. And most of it's reported on the cash receipts, cash basis type things. So there's some additional disclosures there in regards to how you meet a performance obligation and some of those, which are some of the standard type changes that changed in the current year. Page 10, I like to say this standard came in effect last year. It's the liquidity note. As I gave you your liquidity ratio, which is your current assets to current liabilities from a percentage standpoint, standards now went and said we want to see it from a dollars perspective. How much you have within a 12-month period versus how much you expect to, how much you have and it's available to meet to what you got to meet your current obligations going forward. So you can see you have $955,000, which is your cash at the end of the year. You have restrictions, so you have restricted cash out there for donor restrictions of about $14,000. So you have liquid cash of about $940,000 that can be spent to meet some of those current obligations going forward in the next year. Page 12, just to make note, page 12 is concentrations. Always good to just let Board of Trustees know, and not that you probably don't already know this already, but a big part of the contribution or revenue stream that's coming in for the organization is related to the amount that's coming from local government agencies, meaning the town of East Greenbush and the town of Skodak, based on implications that could be out there because of COVID, which you'll see we've got a note disclosure on COVID on the next page as well, that we're unsure of where things are headed in the future. Things could change as they go forward, but these financial statements do not incorporate any changes within. We have no reason to think that anything is changing, but things could. So we're just putting the readers on notice that there's things out there. We can't foresee what those changes could be, but they could potentially have an impact on these financial statements. And that based on the fact that there are large concentrations of revenue that's coming from the town, but if there were cutbacks and things of that nature, that could significantly influence or have an impact on you as an organization going forward. Any changes, any questions on any of the financial statements?
I got a couple.
Go ahead.
Let me quickly find it. One is something that I think you put in there just to see whether we would read this. Yeah, changes in accounting principles on page 6. In May of 2104, about 80 years from now, the FASB issued an ASU.
Oh, good catch. What page is that on?
6.
Okay. I'm glad you actually, I would be happy to change that going forward.
See, I used to write specifications, and every once in a while we would stick something in there to see if bidders actually read our specs.
That's a good catch.
One of the best ones was when one of my spec writers put in there that the contractor shall provide a certain number of white mice for the lab building. And he specified the mice, how big they should be, how long they should be, all sorts of things. The other one though that I had was that I wondered was where you said concentrations.
Correct.
And you write the library receives, $1,900,000. It's substantial revenue from local government sources, including town of East Greenbush and the town of Skodak, which is correct. But these amounts are contractually determined and generated via local government property tax levels. I don't know if the amount we get from East Greenbush is contractually determined, because that's determined by us and then voted on by the citizens. East Greenbush just acts as the tax collector, and it is actually a separate line on the tax bill, a separate levy.
Okay. So should we just take out the word contractually and just leave it or determined?
Well, Skodak is a contractual relationship.
Okay. I can work with Jill to come up with language to change that accordingly.
They are two different relationships, and I think it should be clear in that. So you can work with Jill on that
as well. Jill, we can talk about that tomorrow. We can make that change if that's okay with you. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's all I had.
Anything else? Okay. The last thing I just want to touch base on, and like I said, we don't have to issue any letters except for significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, but anytime we come across something that we think is an area that can be improved, we always ask, put it in writing to just give a recommendation. And the only thing, and not that it's a significant matter, because of the fact that it's currently being done, it's just not being documented. And I talked to Jill, and I'll just read through it. It says, upon discussion with library, she reviews the warrants approved by the board of directors to clear cancel checks from reviewing the monthly bank reconciliation. However, during this process, there's not a formal sign-off on the bank reconciliation bank statement, evidencing that the review has been completed. We just recommend that the library director review the bank statements for any unusual items and investigate any items not approved by the board within the warrants. Documentation of this review should be made on the face of the statement. And like I said, it's not that it hadn't been being done. It's just that there was no documentation to show that. And we think it's just better for transparency. If any auditors ever came in, anything of that nature, you'd want to say, here's the process we go through, here's the approval process, and have everything documented. So it's very clear to whoever's looking at the information. Other than that, really everything was, it was an excellent audit. And I think, you know, like I said, we got through the process first year. Next year, I would expect us to be having this either in February, we'll be having this board meeting, or March for that matter.
Okay. I do have one other quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Our modified cash accounting basis.
Modified cash.
Is not
Modified cash
generally accepted.
basis is basically the you record things when cash is received, and basically when cash is paid versus versus revenue would under GAAP basis is when it's earned, and expenses are paid when incurred. So if you got an if you got a transaction in a bill in January that was for a December service, GAAP would say you pick that up as a liability. Where modified cash basis say you do not, because it's not paid at that point in time. It was incurred. It's not incurred at that. You only record it when it's paid at that matter. That makes sense?
Yeah,
So it's cash
understand
receipts,
that.
cash disbursements, basically. And then the only other difference is you're adding depreciation, and you're and other types of things such as credit card payables and things of that nature, as well as short-term financing gets added in a modified cash basis accounting principles.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
Because it gets confusing doing just on the cash basis, especially when it comes to the end of the year and the payroll. And that's why I always questioned why we didn't do it on an accrual basis.
We could do accrual basis. However, what makes it tricky is it's under governmental accounting standard, governmental auditing standards. And to go to governmental auditing standards, you would then have to implement, and in the past, and I think I talked to Robert about this earlier as well, under government auditing standards, you have to report the liabilities from net pension liabilities that really aren't relevant to the operations of your organization. So to go to that, you'd be putting liabilities on there. They call them district-wide liabilities, and we can report that, but it really doesn't fit the purpose of what your AUD reporting is, because the AUD no longer requires any of that information to be reported, and that's why we went modified cash basis. Most libraries report on modified cash basis. Some do under governmental, but like I said, if that information is meaningful to you, then we could do that. I just look at it from the perspective that it may be too much information, and it really may not give you the best from a reporting side or a board perspective.
So you're saying basically most libraries are doing it the way we're doing it.
Correct.
And that's okay?
Correct. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with the reporting that you've chosen under modified cash. We could, like I said, if you wanted to change the governmental, we could do that, but we're adding a lot more net pension assets, net pension liabilities that may not be relevant for this, for your reporting purposes or your monitoring from a month-to-month budget perspective, because otherwise you'd really be receiving that on, like, to me, your monthly reporting is almost like your operating and things of that nature, and your capital of what Jill's reporting month to month. Otherwise, so this statement kind of reflects that, except it doesn't report the liabilities and a receivable that's out there each year. Where governmental is going to be more, it's going to be more sophisticated, and it's not going to really meet your day-to-day or month-to-month reporting that you guys are seeing. I could show you examples, which I think I did as well, which in the original discussion we had, we were going to do that, But when I talked to Jill, and I said, what is the intended purpose? If the intended purpose is really to have reporting more or less that's meant for the AUD and your board's perspective, then that may not be the most relevant approach. But if the board wants to go that route, we could do that going forward.
Okay.
As I said,
I
I'll take the direction of wherever you guys want to go with it.
Yeah, I think my sense is, and this is just me talking, is that we like to know how we're doing during the year as we go. And I think that's what we're doing.
Yep, and I think that's
you
what
know,
this is.
If I understand correctly what you're saying about the liabilities of the pension fund and so on and so forth, and putting those in there, I don't know. We don't really even look at that kind of stuff. So that
Correct.
could just confuse us.
Yeah, and Michael, just to give you an instance, is like there's what they refer to as deferred inflows, deferred outflows, net pension asset liabilities. All those would then be reported on your balance sheet. And that's not really relevant for you because that's all being calculated by an actuary out there. So to report that wouldn't be meaningful in my mind for your purposes.
Yeah.
Now, if the town ever requested that, that would be a different story, but nobody's requesting that from you, so.
No, and we are a separate entity from the town, so
Correct.
I don't see that the town would ever request that. I just want to do it correctly. That's,
Yep.
So not be in violation of anything that we're supposed to be doing. But
Correct.
the sense
You are perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are not in violation. You are perfectly fine in regards to the statements that are presented.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? If not, Robert, I really thank you. Actually, this explanation went faster and easier than I expected, and I understood it all. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your time
Yeah.
going back and forth. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And we'll, like I said, Jill, I'll touch base with you tomorrow and we can make these final revisions and I can send these final reports out to you tomorrow.
Okay, now you can take the rest of the night off.
Thank you, everybody. It was nice
Okay.
meeting everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty, we missed you at the beginning. Kevin said
I would-
goodbye.
For some reason, I couldn't get on GoToMeeting. And when I got on at 7:20, all it said was waiting for Jill. So about 7:35, I said, this doesn't seem right. So that's when I got on my phone. And then I kept trying and trying. And finally, for some reason, I was able to get in. My malware, for some reason, was acting up.
It's just, Kevin joined us just briefly in the beginning to say goodbye and thank us. And he really wanted to express those thanks also specifically to you, because this is also your last meeting. And I'm going to echo that. I want to express the same thank you to you for your many, many years of service. You and Kevin are some of our longtime trustees. And, I hope you enjoy this last meeting.
with the audit.
With the audit, yes. Okay, why don't we then move on? I don't think there's any public here that wants to speak. So let's do the approval of the minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for Eileen for putting them together. I appreciate that. Does anybody, I guess, I thought my name was there. So does anybody have any changes to make to the minutes as they were presented? The minutes for the November 17th meeting.
My name was misspelled.
Oh my, after all these years?
Gosh.
That's right, look at it.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, Betty.
It's okay.
Can I just I think there might be an error in some of the treasurer's motions, the third and the fourth motion, but it could be my notes that are incorrect. Because you will recall at last meeting, we actually approved 2 of the profit and loss and balance sheets. So I think that the third motion under the treasurer's report should reflect that it was dated November 12th. And then the fourth motion should be that it reflects October 15th and November 11th. I mean, maybe it doesn't, but those were my notes.
Oh, you did them separately?
Well, I just was jotting them down because I didn't know if Eileen was doing them or I was, but thanks, Eileen. I mean, do
Well, I'm
other
reading
people
here.
agree? I mean, I think that's the way the reports from the last meeting were presented. So I think that's the way it should be recorded.
Okay, who's going to correct that?
I am.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have any questions, call me. Or
I'll correct it in the, for this meeting.
okay.
And
And then,
oh, go ahead, Lynn, I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead because it's your name I was going to talk about. So go ahead.
Oh, well, and the last motion? Was that,
Nope, mine wasn't the last. Oh, the last, which motion? The last.
well, the motion to reconvene the board meeting and adjourn the meeting
Oh, yeah.
has me reconvening and adjourning it. And I'm thinking that maybe it might have been Shay, and then I second it. I don't think I can do both.
Hold on, let me look. Admin. Too many meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, this was November 7th, executive session.
Yeah, after the
Move to
executive session.
executive session, I don't have any notes. I have you move out of executive session, motion to adjourn. I actually had you and me for both of them. I had you, oh, I see. I think I was supposed to be me. I was the one who was the second.
Okay,
That would make sense.
that works.
So, Mary, you made the motion to reconvene, and Lynn, you
Yes.
did it,
Yeah,
and you were the second?
I was.
Okay, all set.
Now, under the Friends, I think, Liz, aren't you the treasurer next year? Oh, I lost.
Here I am.
No, I lost everybody.
You
Where
can hear me.
We're here.
Here I am.
We do not
Yes.
have a treasurer yet for next year at the Friends. Liz is the vice president.
I
we
don't
do
think
not
so.
No, Liz is the treasurer. We don't have a vice president.
What is this? Well, according to the Friends minutes, Liz is the vice president, and we do not have a treasurer.
That's wrong, though.
Okay,
But the fourth point says vice president and database chair are needed.
Right.
okay.
So should that be treasurer and database chair are needed?
Treasurer,
No. I am the treasurer.
okay. Got
We
it.
need a vice president and a database person.
Okay. So we just got to correct, Liz, that you're the treasurer.
I am.
Mhm.
I mean, and then I don't know if this really even matters, but under the admin committee motion about the PTO,
Mhm.
and I mean, I may be wrong, but I thought that the motion was made by committee and therefore it wasn't Mary, it was the admin committee that made the motion. I don't know if it even matters, but if it doesn't, there was no second on that motion. And I thought we said we didn't need a second because it came out of the admin committee.
Mhm.
Exactly. There was no second because the board approved it.
No, you still need a second to have the board vote on it.
Typically, the committee makes a motion and then somebody on the board other than the committee does the second. At least that's how they do it at Upper Hudson.
So maybe Mary was the second.
The second, yeah.
Motion by the admin committee with a second by Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Eileen, I can make these edits for you if you'd like.
All righty.
I'm writing it down.
I would just put them in this current, in the December minutes.
Great, perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
And then
any other corrections?
I just want, I'm under the director's report, and this could just be a typo, but it says working on beset service model. Was it just supposed to be best service model, or is there a type of
Yes.
service model?
Best.
Just best, okay. That's what I thought, but I could have missed.
Okay, anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
I'll make the motion to accept as corrected.
I'll
Oh,
second.
that's Mary.
Mary.
Yes.
Shay, did you second?
Yes.
Shay seconded. Is anybody opposed? If not, carries. Okay. I have to say that's the longest approval of minutes I think we've ever done.
I
I
know.
agree.
All right, treasurer's reports. Bob, you're on.
Okay. We'll start with the off-warrant expenses. And basically, we had 2 payroll periods this month, which totaled $84,748.97. All the other items on the off-warrant report are normal operating expenses, such as health insurance, that we pretty much see every month. So the total off-warrant expenses for this month were $100,462.12. The same period in 2019, we spent $155,127.31. So we had a difference of $54,665.19 less than in the same period the prior year. And that was basically because we had 3 payroll periods in 2019 for that month. So does anyone have any questions regarding the off warrant? So then can I ask for a motion to accept the off warrant expenses?
I'll make a motion to accept the off warrant. It's Mary.
I'll second it, Betty.
Betty. Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, anybody opposed to accepting them? Nope, motion carries. Next, Bob, the warrant.
Okay. Then looking at the warrant of bills by vendor, I'll just highlight a few that I thought were significant. You all have my report, and you all have an opportunity to look at the off-warrant expenses or at the warrant. But I'll just make mention of a few items that I thought were significant. Amazon Credit Services, we had a bill for $1,903.37. That includes $1,349 for Logitech group video conferencing bundle. and the rest is for books, programming, supplies, and so forth. B&L control services, $875 for cooling tower maintenance, fourth quarter payment. Brian's and Gramuglia, $3,000, which is the balance for our audit, which after hearing Robert's presentation tonight, I think is money well spent. I thought that, I didn't say this to him, but I thought that this audit, I don't know if it's just because it was the first time that they've done it, but was a lot more thorough than what I've seen in the past. And again, maybe just because it's the first time that they did it, but and I also thought it was very helpful that they actually made recommendations on how we could improve things, which I don't recall seeing in the past either, at least on the recent past. Another item was for capital EAP for $1,650. Jill, I don't know if if you can. I don't know if this is the first time I've seen this particular expense. This is for a employee counseling and wellness services program. Is that a new program, Jill?
No, it's an annual. We've had it for, this might be the third or fourth year. This is the Employee Assistance Program.
Yep.
So it's ongoing sessions for employees if they want to have any sort of counseling treatment related to the job or anything else that's going on in their lives. They can be connected with other community agencies. We've used it in the past to have mandatory counseling for employees if needed. It's also, they do some great training. So there's training involved with, included in this, like our sexual harassment training. They do sexual harassment training for us, which is a mandatory training by the state. It's money well spent. Every year they give us a list of how often it's used, and I go over that. They don't give me the details of who's using it, but they give me the numbers and the breakdown and what kinds of usage that we're getting, and I think it's money well spent.
So is that the cost for next year's services then, or?
Yeah, so every year we sign the contract in December.
It's a fixed rate, right, Jill?
What?
It's a fixed rate.
It's a fixed rate. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a 12-month contract.
Okay. Then we had.
There may be sometimes you would see a capital EAP amount in addition to that, and that would be if we choose to engage them for additional training, because you can also engage them by the hour for training, but we have some training included in this dollar amount, and this was something a couple of years ago that went through committee review before we engaged with them. And maybe it's something we could go through again if you wanted to look at the details of the contract.
Okay. And finally, the only other item I point to is Zubeen, $845.75 for children's book recommendation software, I guess. And this is the full annual charge for that. Other than that, pardon me?
That's a summer. That is the summer reading, and actually, I think we're going to be using it for winter reading as well. This is the online database that both the staff and the public use to record their all the summer reading components.
Okay.
So will it be that amount again, Jill, if you do it for the winter?
No, this is the cost. It's a database cost for the year.
Okay.
And I believe this is the second year of a 3-year contract.
Okay. I have one question on the Upper Hudson 6-month hoopla commitment.
Mhm.
As I remember, that's that streaming service that we got first, and then
Yep.
Upper Hudson got. And we were folded into Upper Hudson. Somehow we were supposed to be credited. And now Upper Hudson is not going to continue that, if I understand correctly.
Right.
Financially, has that all been worked out? Is there an accounting for that?
Yes. So this $318 is money that we owed them, that our patrons borrowed more than we had paid up front. So now any additional funds will be paid directly to Hoopla. This is the last payment to Upper Hudson.
Okay.
So we held this. You'll see that this was a bill from April. We held this bill until we went through all the details.
Okay. So you do have an accounting for all that?
We have an accounting for all that. Yep. We went through all the details. I went through all the details.
What are Jackie Reynolds and George Steele Children's Program? Are those people, or what is that?
Yep.
Those
So,
are people. Those are people who are putting those programs on.
Right.
Obviously, they're not in person now; they're virtually.
For contractors. That's
Oh.
a typical program. So that's a children's program on owl ecology and another children's program on ventriloquism. So they're doing virtual programs right now over Zoom, and patrons will sign up to be a part of the program. It's usually a smaller group with some interaction, as well as sometimes they have, like I know the ventriloquism class had kits that went out to each kid that pre-registered.
Good, thanks.
Jill, are those virtual programs well attended?
Yep, you'll see that in the monthly report. You'll see an attendance for the program, actually. I could look up the details for that. And that's something that each department is in charge of figuring out the programs right now and making adjustments as needed, because programming has changed so much. Actually, I'd have to look. I'm gonna guess it's the OWL program is not until, I'll have to look for the detail for these particular programs, because they were not in November.
Jill, the dates are on there.
Is that what the December 30th is?
Yeah.
Program? So
Yes.
the OWL program is December 30th. Thank you, Vicki. I was wondering that. And December 29th. So
They haven't been held.
How in the past the checks for programs were cut and then they were given to the presenters at the program itself. So right now I'm assuming that the checks will be cut and then mailed to them after the class. That's why you have that second date to hold it there. Can you confirm that, Vicki? Is that the process?
Yes. Right now, we're going to have to mail it to them.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the warrant?
A quick question, Bob. You have these as notable items, this list. And I just wondered, like, why are the book sales, there's a lot of books and shipping things that are considered notable. So I just wondered what makes them notable, I guess.
Mainly, to me, mainly the size of the expense.
Okay.
I mean, I don't list as notable things that are $100 or $200 generally, but if they're a little bit more sizable items, I'll mention them.
Okay. I was just curious. Thanks.
Any further questions on the warrant? So could I ask for a motion
If not, let's
to
get the
allow the
authorization.
on the warrant?
I so move.
I'll
Lynn.
second. Mary will second.
Mayor second. Okay. Any further comments or questions? If not, does anybody oppose the motion? Not hearing anybody, motion carries. All right, Bob, P&L.
Okay,
Who was
you know,
second?
Wait.
Wait, Eileen probably needs the amount.
Who was the second?
Who seconded the motion?
Mary.
Thank you.
Do you have the dollar amount? Is that what you were looking for? I didn't hear.
I have the
She
dollar
was
amount.
looking,
Okay.
dollar amount is 25,624.19.
Okay.
Okay. Bob, P&L.
okay. So looking at the income side first, at this time, 95% of the year is completed. All of our tax revenue for East Greenbush and Skodak has been received. General fines are substantially under budget at 27.9%, and as our total fines and fees, which are under budget at 26.9%. Basically, we suspended collecting fines at this time due to the coronavirus pandemic. All of our Friends grant income has been received, and interest income is substantially under budget at 31.8%. And our total income is at 96.8% of budget, so we're right on pace. On the expense side, our annual bond expense has been paid in total for the year, and our bond payment has been completed. IT hardware and software are over budget at 130.9%. Much of this is items related to the construction grant. Telecommunications is over budget at 112.1%. We paid for mobile hotspots and so forth, also related to the construction grants. Total technology and communications are over budget at 109.2%. Our programming and planning is under budget at 64.6%. Again, most of our programming has been suspended during the pandemic. Our downloadable materials are over budget at 103.9% as we're shifting resources from print to downloadable materials. Our periodicals are over budget at 102%. Most of the periodicals have been ordered for the year. And our total books and materials are under budget at 88.3%. Contract maintenance is significantly under budget at 53.8%. Our insurance is really right on budget at 96.9%. Our full annual premium has been paid. Maintenance supplies are slightly under budget. Utilities are significantly under budget at 50.9%. And our total facilities expenses are significantly under budget at 63.2%. Professional services are under budget at 82.5%. And total operations are substantially under budget at 70%. Neisler's is over budget at 107.8%. It's been paid in full for the year. I think we underestimated a little bit in the budget what the Neisler's commitment would be. Total salaries are under budget. It's 91.9%. And our total personnel is under budget at 92.8%. Total operating expenses are under budget, and our total expenses are under budget at 91.1%. Anyone have any questions regarding the P&L statement? Okay. So looking at the balance sheet, our total gift and grant cash increased by $82.75 from the prior month. The Pioneer operating account increased by $7,253 from the prior month. Pioneer Public Finance decreased by $128,990.79 from the prior month. Fund balance increased by $3,587.55. Her account was pretty much unchanged from the prior month, and capital reserve increased by $95,669.75. We received a couple of checks from the state for the construction grant. And the operating contingency reserve is pretty much unchanged from the prior month. Total fixed assets were unchanged at $2,682,164 from the prior month. And total assets decreased by $22,394 from the prior month. Under liabilities and equity, retained earnings were unchanged from the prior month. Net income decreased by $133,980 from the prior month. Total equity increased by $464,872.70. And total liabilities and equity decreased by $79,729. Any questions on the balance sheet? So then could I ask for a motion to approve the financials as presented?
Nobody?
I'll make a motion. Oh, Betty, okay. I'll second it, Mary.
I'm wondering if in the minutes, if we should have a couple of sentences, because this is basically the end of the year, and the budget is so different from our actual expenses due to the pandemic. Do you think we should put a couple of sentences in there to explain why there's such an enormous difference? So years from now, if somebody looks back and questions, well, you know, why were the general fines so low? And why were, you know, you spent more on digital than on books? Maybe just a couple of sentences.
Betty,
Well, Betty,
this is
I'll
November, and November's report. I think your point is a very good one, and I think we might want to do that when we do the next one, which is really the end of the year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll be doing another. Okay. Yeah,
We'll send it to you, Betty.
Okay.
I'll be doing another report for the end of the year, and then we'll start in January doing the monthly reports again. So I'll be meeting with Vicki again to when she closes out the books for the end of the year.
That makes sense.
And I will request, Betty, that you get a copy.
I had a question, Jill, for like periodicals and purchasing of those. That's like an annual fee that you pay, right? up front?
For the most part.
So are periodicals things like newspapers and so are those, are we able to use them right now is I guess my question.
Yes, and they can be checked out.
Oh, they can. Okay. I didn't know that.
Only the current copy can't be checked out. Everything else can be checked out.
Okay.
Okay. Did we have a motion and a second?
We did, Betty and Mary.
Betty and Mary, okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, is anybody opposed to the motion of approving the P and or the balance and, yeah, P&L and balance sheet? Not hearing any, carries. All right, Bob, do you have anything else? Next
Not
item
at this
under
time.
treasurer, we already did.
So you haven't officially approved it, and I don't know if you want to officially approve it after you receive the final, not the draft, at the next meeting, or if you want to officially approve
The audit.
the draft.
I think we should do it at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Let's make sure it gets on the agenda as the first item.
okay.
Okay. Shall we move on? Let's do committee reports, admin.
Okay, that you have minutes, document number 8. The biggest was that the town of Skodak board is going to fund the library at the full amount requested. That was perfect. And we talked in our committee and we're going to, Michael's going to appoint an ad hoc committee to begin work right after the new year so that we can hopefully get something more permanent in place for future years. So with our goal to meet with them by mid-March with the town of Skodak. The audit, well, we've talked with them today, but we did have a conversation about that at our meeting. And we talked a lot about COVID and, where we were with COVID, the pandemic plan, and just with the library function. But I know that it just seems like old business because that was 2 weeks ago and life has changed a lot since then. Any other questions?
No? Okay. I don't think this is something we have to approve. So there's nothing there that we have to approve. So why don't we move on to service committee?
Okay, we also talked about COVID and the plan update, the draft plan that Jill had presented to all of us, the entire board. And the entire board actually was invited to participate in this portion of our meeting. And I think, Jill, I noticed like in your director's report, I worded things differently in mine, but I think we're saying the same things. But I just wanted to make sure that what I had put in here was accurate with the self-service stuff for the copier. So my understanding was that the library staff would not be helping patrons do the more complicated things. They would offer to do it for them as opposed to having to interact and touch things and have patrons nearby. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we have done is we put signage up saying that it's self-service only. So encouraging people to do the less complicated copying at the library. And if someone's having trouble, staff have been instructed that they will take over and be able to assist them, but the patron would need to move at least 6 feet away. That seems to be the one, not the one, but one of the trickier spots where we're having trouble maintaining physical distancing at the library. There's a lot of close encounters And so some of the more complicated interactions maybe can't occur, because if someone, wants to be there and they want to enlarge it by 20%, but they need to look at it and figure it out and move it, and they may need to go to a Staples or somewhere else, because the copy machine is sometimes complicated for them to do on their own.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we were saying the same thing, just the focus of mine was a little bit different than in the director's report. And then we did, as we discussed among the committee, we did agree that we wouldn't do a full rollback to phase 4 at this point, but would pick the areas that the library and you felt were the most dangerous, I guess, in terms of health and safety. And so that's what we focused on. The bylaw revisions, everybody received them. It's our committee's final draft, so we presented it to the board, and hopefully everyone will get a chance to read that. And if there's questions or comments, happily take them. And then in January, we were hoping we could maybe approve our new bylaws, or revised bylaws, I guess. So just to highlight what changed, we put in some language which would allow us to remove a trustee and or appoint a trustee if a vacancy occurs midterm. Added some information on our meeting format and potential virtual meetings and what gives us the authority to do them. We added language for all of the committees that we have and what their general purposes are. General officer responsibilities and the director's role. Tried to remove any fluff kind of language and keep it more direct. And then clarified some of the bylaws to make them or to align them more with the guidelines from State Education Department and or the trustee manual. So that's highlights. And so, like I said, if anybody has questions and wants to submit them to us, we would happily take them. Does anybody have questions at this point or concerns?
No, I think they look terrific.
Thank you, Lynn. Oh, one other thing in terms of looks, Jill did say that once we do approve them, Jill or somebody from the staff will be able to put them in whatever bylaw format is, and on the right kind of paper. It won't be a policy statement anymore. And then we talked about strategic planning. That's we're supposed to put that on the agenda in February. And we were talking realistically as to whether or not we can actually do strategic planning in February, given the pandemic, and it doesn't look like things are going to change all that soon. So there were a couple options and kind of needed the board to consider what they might want to do. And I put them in the minutes. There's 3 things where one option was to extend the current plan for another year and then go through dates, for 2022, I guess, to just extend our current plan for next year. We have a hybrid where we could take a look, as board members take a look at the current strategic plan as well with Jill and whoever else Jill deems appropriate in the library, to look at certain target areas of the current plan and see if there are things that we need to update like right away.
Except that would be tackle those in 2021, right?
Oh yeah, it would be kind of hard to do it in Christmas past here. Yeah, that's a typo. It should be 2021 in the minutes, yeah. And then the bigger picture, which is what we had talked about way long ago before the pandemic was to develop kind of like an ad hoc committee to evaluate the plan. And we had talked about getting a consultant, bringing a consultant on board and helping us focus on areas that needed the focus, and not really have to, go through the entire strategic plan and redo it. So that we don't even know if there would be the individual that was available. I guess it was almost a year ago now. If she's still doing it and if she would be available. Just opinion wise, it would maybe be a little bit difficult to do that kind of thing virtually. And again, given where we are with the pandemic and the focus of the library right now and what we need to be focused on, perhaps that kind of commitment is really not possible time-wise and labor-wise. So, so I don't know, Michael, how you want to handle this. If you want the board to pick something now, or should we just consider this? The board needs to be thinking about it and decide in January.
I think we still have a fair amount to do today.
Okay.
So I would say and this is the last meeting of the year. I think we already pretty much, he's not sitting there, but agree, Shay is going to head the services committee next year. So I think we push it off and, dig into it. This is a good sort of summary and starting point. And I would suggest that we just shift this to January.
That works for me. Okay, that's all I have. So if anybody has questions. Nope.
Okay. Jill, let's move on to the director's report. Now, this does consist of the first reading of the bylaws. So we will be doing the second reading and hopefully voting on it in January. And everybody hopefully will try and read that ahead of time. If there are any comments at all, Mary, I'm going to ask that they forward them to you. And then you can forward it on to Shay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just scrolling through here. All right, Jill.
Okay, so, but as everybody's referenced several times tonight, it seems like a lot has changed in a short period of time. We're back to focusing heavily on keeping track of what's going on in the news and making sure that all of our safety protocols are up to speed at the library. The library itself in the month of November was open for 18 days and 116 hours. The building was closed to the public for 1 day, if you recall, during the election. So that's how long ago we're talking. It does feel like a lifetime ago, even though it's only December, whatever today is, the 15th. We did have the drive-through open on election day, so we were open for a total of 123 hours and 19 days for the drive-through window. And we also have been accepting returns on Mondays, which gives that 24 days and 138 hours. We had just over 4,500 items that were circulated holds through the drive-through window, and approximately 1,500 people came out. A little bit over 1,500 people we've served through the drive-through window. So that continues to be a very popular way for patrons to access the library. We are seeing less people come in through the library in the last week. It seems to be, the news in the community seems to be impacting people's natural visits at the library. However, the people who are at the library are very grateful and very appreciative. We had somebody today speak to a reference staff member on the phone, and they wanted to make sure that that it was relayed to the entire staff how grateful they were for all of the protocols we've put into place and the service, that they're extremely grateful for what's going on. And shout out to our staff who is continuing to make sure, put themselves on the line with the unknown, what's out there, and continuing to provide pretty awesome service and, meanwhile planning for the future in an unknown future. So in a few minutes, we'll talk about safety plans, some safety plan updates you'll see in my report. And Mary talked about that from the service committee from the COVID meeting that we just had, that we've removed all the seating. This just happened a few days ago. Except for the computer seating, we've reduced the public computers, desktop computers, to 2. But we still have the laptops and the mobile hotspots that we're lending, and that continues to be really popular, as well as the Wi-Fi service in the parking lot that we are just about to extend. We're moving forward with a contract for that, and that's part of our grant service. So hopefully there won't be any shutdowns for contractors, and we'll be able to continue doing that. And then we talked about the copier. So we have also increased some of our marketing and PR to the community, trying to just remind people that masks are required, and setting the expectation that it's safety first at the library, and we'd like to stay open. Our goal is to serve people safely, and if everybody does their part, then we can keep our doors open. But of course, we're also paying really close attention to all the numbers that keep increasing, and actively planning just in case we have to roll back additional services. A couple of upcoming things to let you know about that are not in my report, but are happening over the next couple of months. One is you will start the next newsletter that you get will look a little bit different. It's shorter. It's in color at 4 pages. We are going to start sending out the printed newsletter 6 times a year instead of 4 times a year. And this is to East Greenbush and Skodak residents. And the format has changed a little bit to be a little bit more news about what's happening at the library and less focused on programming like you would have seen in the past. The programming news is really getting out there through our weekly e-newsletter. So we're going to try to use the printed newsletter as a way to reach people that aren't necessarily using the library, because our heavy users are really connected through our e-newsletter. The numbers are, people are continuing to subscribe and continuing to read and open the e-newsletter, both the weekly e-newsletter that's library-wide. We have a monthly e-newsletter that's adult services, and then we have a youth services blog. Check it out with Charlie. And those numbers, people are reading things there. So that's where a lot of our programming information is happening. But we think it's still important to continue to reach out to people who may need the library but haven't thought of us. And particularly as the economy continues to struggle, people, are going to be looking for job assistance and social service, assistance, connecting with different agencies and safety nets, and we can help connect them. So we're hoping to do that and get the word out through our printed newsletter. So So you'll get that. You'll get a January and February newsletter coming. And then that's one other thing that I think is really exciting that's different that we're doing right now is we're holding a short story contest. It's not going to begin until the new year, but it'll begin before our next board meeting. And if you live in Rensselaer County and your story is a work of fiction, the contest, and it's for all. It doesn't matter if you are an experienced writer or a complete, you've never written anything before, you can enter. Your short story must take place in Rensselaer County during COVID. So we're hoping to have a really fun event through this. It's short stories between 1,500 to 2,000 words, and you'll get more information about that in the next newsletter, and I'm sure it'll be coming out in our weekly newsletters, but I'm excited about this pen to pandemic short story contest, and hopefully that will give people something fun to do over the winter. And that is, I'm happy to take any questions about the director's report. Well, of course, also we have our winter reading program that's starting. Both adult and youth services are doing a winter reading program that's coming. That right after the new year, you will see more information about the winter reading program, and it's a pretty fun one that we've got planned for this year. If you're interested in you'll notice when you do get the newsletter that we do highlight one or two staff members actually, and we'd like to highlight board members and members of the Friends and anybody who has connections to the library world with what's happening in our library. So if you are interested or would like to nominate someone, whether it's a community member or a board member or a staff member, please let me know. That would be great. And we do have a series of workshops coming up in January and February, which are helping with some job assistance. So I know that there are people who are out of work, and sometimes our numbers for some of our job assistance programs have been lower than we would like them to be. And we've got some really great resources that we've connected with to put on some, it's virtual job programs, Facebook pages for business, meeting online, a primer. So for people who are, just getting back into things and are trying to figure out how do we do this, how do we meet online, introduction to Google Apps Suite, introduction to Excel. These are classes that you could, you might have to pay for in other places, and we're providing them for free to patrons. So hopefully people will take advantage, and please spread the word that those kinds of things are happening at the library, and to call us if someone would like more information.
Will the Friends be adding stuff to the 6 newsletters now, or will there still be 4 for them?
So there's going to be 6 newsletters, and when there's Friends news, yes, we will be putting stuff in there. Yep. But it's not going to necessarily be something that, the Friends are not going to have a full page with the newsletter. And in fact, that has been tricky to come up with enough news for a full page. But once the Friends are really active in doing some programs and events, we can absolutely put Friends news in there anytime. Love to do that. In fact, the Friends did have Well, we haven't had the liaison reports. I'll wait for Liz. She can give me
After we do the COVID update plan, then
Okay.
you don't want to steal Liz's thunder.
Woo,
I know. Excited. So I'll let her tell us all about that.
okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Any
anything
other
else
questions
on?
about my report before we
Yeah,
move to the COVID?
Okay, let's move. Jill?
Yep. You ready to move on to the safety plan?
Yep. I don't hear anything. You froze up for a minute, but
Do you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to the safety plan. And this is an update to the safety plan. You'll see that anything in blue is a revision. And so I took out some of the things that I thought were extraneous. And, you know, this is a really long document, so I tried to shorten it as much as possible. You right now with it's 20 pages right now. So it's going to shorten it considerably to take out some of the pieces in here that just are not necessary. So there and there, I'll move to the things that I added. So on page 3, we're talking about entering and exiting the building for visitors, and a couple of just basic things here. Tried to clean up some of this stuff. We've got bins for item returns will be in the front vestibule and other designated locations, because I didn't, we have been talking about potentially accepting returns in the drive-through window, as we've been learning more and more about materials and how the virus spreads. We think that we might be able to, we think that we can do that safely. So we're looking at a process to do that now. I added that during the greeting entry, one of the pieces that patrons will go through for the orientation is physical distancing. I changed some of the language in here to include time limits, occupancy limits, service limits, so that that this should be in blue: time limits, occupancy limits, and service limits, because that would not limit us to limited services, grab and go, no seating or computers, 30-minute visits. That's what we had before in there. I took out this whole, at first 10 people will be allowed to visit, the numbers, and just said occupancy levels will be determined based on government capacity mandates, virus spread in the community, and staffing capacity, so that I'm trying to give us a little bit more flexibility to move back and forth with what's happening in the community. And, you know, of course, the board will be involved in these service level decisions as we roll back right now. And hopefully as the vaccine starts working, hopefully we'll start increasing again. But so we don't have to update this 20-page plan and forget things. And same thing with some of the CDC guidelines. I added language so that it's based on what's happening with the CDC Department of Health guidelines, because stuff is changing. It's been changing, and we've been making the changes internally, but sometimes you forget to all the different places that we have all this documentation. So it's important to get rid of some of these extraneous stuff here. I just took out the details for the different workspaces. This was really important when we reopened and we didn't know how it was going to be set up. now we know how everything's working, and the important pieces are the safety protocols that we've put in place. That we've put in the sneeze guards, and that staff are required to wipe down surfaces, and one person at a time. The physical distancing, that's all the important stuff, not necessarily how we, that's all operational stuff that doesn't need to be documented in this document. Added language to comply with what's actually happening in practice, that anytime a staff member takes off their face covering, it must be inside a designated break room, only one person in a designated break room at a time, and allow for 30 minutes in between room use for air to properly recirculate. This is actually one of the things that makes me feel like we are in one of the safer environments, is because we're not doing this. You'll notice that right now there's two people in the building, Eileen and I, and we're not in the same room. I have my mask off, but she wouldn't be in my office right now for 30 minutes after I had my mask off because of the protocol. We shouldn't be near each other for 30 minutes. And maybe that's overboard, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And knock on wood, we haven't had any virus outbreaks at the library. Drive-through window with material lending. I added information here that face masks are required for everybody. Members of the public, even at the drive-through window, we've been asking people to please put up their face mask before we open the window, but I just put that in there. I added quarantine timelines are based on the most up-to-date guidance recommended by the Upper Hudson Library System that, as you know, just changed to 72 hours. Allow the 30 minutes in between room use for the air to properly recirculate. I took out the actual quantities for supplies because we have already in here that Vicki is responsible for monitoring the supply and procurement, and that when supplies get to 50%, people be ordering more. And I know she's been regularly keeping an eye on that and ordering, so this seems like just extra work to be updating this component here. She has her own documentation. I added here that visitors who are wearing a visibly soiled face covering are provided a clean mask to wear, because that does happen at the library. Added in here that filters MERV 11 or higher will be used. We are using MERV 11 filters already. We don't know if MERV 13 will work, but they've been ordered and they've been on back order for quite a long time. And so we've also ordered replacement MERV 11, just in case we never even get the MERV 13. And then also that HVAC units will be set to maximum fresh air intake levels. This is not new stuff at the library. We've been doing this from the beginning, but somehow it got left off the safety document. I added something in here that staff are required to report unsafe working conditions to me, just to make sure that we are, if anybody sees something, we should say something. That's the way that we're going to keep each other safe with these levels, is to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing, which I feel very confident in our staff that they are doing the right thing. But again, if you see something, say something. It's a good thing to have. And then the next piece here, we had in some scenarios for what would happen. How would we respond in certain situations if there was a suspected COVID case? What I did was take out the scenarios and then add in the protocols that are recommended by the CDC and detail them in there, what they would be, who's in charge of doing it, what the process is. And then I took out the scenarios here. I believe that is pretty much it. And now I will be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? I'm sure everybody's had the opportunity to study this in great detail. Jill, what are you looking for tonight?
I think that it would be wonderful if we could have an approval of this. If you see something that needs to be changed, this is a living document, so we could meet, we need to be meeting regularly right now and communicating regularly. So I think easily updates can happen over email, and the next time we have an in-person meeting, we will retroactively approve. You can see that the last time actually that we approved this document was June 16th. It's been revised several times at a Saturday board meeting, but it hasn't actually been reapproved. So I'd like for an approval right now so that we can have an official approval. But then, you guys have a copy that's highlighted if you want to double check and see if you have any questions or you feel like things can be worded differently. This is a living document and we can make those changes pretty easily. But particularly the steps to follow, I think this is, because of what's happening right now, I need some of these updates in here.
Okay. Question, I've heard you mention a few times that we need to potentially meet more often on this again, which I assume is instituting our Saturday morning meetings.
Right.
And of course, we could meet other times too if we needed to. I believe it's going to be up to you to decide when you think it's necessary for us to meet.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest, unless it's an emergency came up, that on Thursday at the latest, and again, our Saturday morning meetings are open to all the trustees. And I assume what we decided in the past, which was that as long as we have 4 trustees there, the trustees can make a decision which to do something, and we will then formalize it and document it. They have basically the approval to do that, but we will formally document it and approve it at the following board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should continue that process. But I would say, Jill, you need to let us know on Thursday at the latest when you believe we should be meeting next Saturday morning.
Fair?
And can I chime in? It would be helpful to have
Sure.
agendas for or just something to know what we're talking about, because we can get talking about something like we did the other night for an hour and a half when we need to keep those focused, because Saturday meetings are fine, but I'm also not interested in doing like a 2-hour Saturday meeting if we can keep our focus on what needs to be covered. So if we're going to get that notice on Thursday, it would also be good to have, here's what we're going to talk about, and so that we can be focused, because that's really what we need in those meetings.
I agree. Good point.
But that's assuming that it's not an emergency meeting based on something critical that's happened that's changed, or
Yes,
if
obviously.
4 days advance notice on something, absolutely, I'll give you agendas.
So I thought we gave like, if it's an emergency, we gave you the authority to make a change or whatever, right? Is that something? Okay. So you're still able to do that. I mean, it wouldn't, you can act
You're just saying if the governor suddenly announces effective Monday, closures everywhere, that's an example that you'd probably have a surprise, an unexpected Saturday meeting, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what I would do is whenever I got that information, I would interpret information, provide a recommendation over email, get feedback over email, over the phone, or let's say somebody is, you know, if somebody has tested positive, but it's probable that multiple people will be positive and we're going to need to shut down for, you know, the library, those kinds of things would be considered emergencies. And so we may need to go into an emergency shutdown scenario, and I may just, you know, be communicating with you via email and phone, and then we would call an emergency meeting. But for most of the meetings right now, I'm going to assume that we're going to continue to have, unless you want to change the day, Saturday meetings. If you prefer to do an early morning meeting or an evening meeting every week instead, that's fine. But I think it's important that we start meeting weekly now that we are seeing such significant numbers so that we can make some adjustments and I can give you updates. I think when we instituted the Saturday meetings, the helpfulness of those meetings was things were changing and moving so rapidly that my ability to prep and prepare documentation for the board, it was challenging. So to have a regular meeting to be able to keep you up to date with all the things, that was the value in the Saturday morning meetings when we were reopening. At this stage, I think I could give you, you know, we're not trying to reorganize the library. Rolling back is different than trying to recreate every single new situation of the library. So I think having an agenda will work perfectly for these Saturday meetings. But I do think we should put them on. I think we should plan to touch base most Saturdays right now would be my guess based on the numbers that we're seeing.
Okay, but I still would like you to confirm it. I mean, send out
I'll
the
confirm
invite.
Same morning.
Send out the invite that we'll use as the link.
So do you want
Okay.
a motion to approve this today?
Are you making that motion, Lynn?
I would be willing to, a motion to approve
Okay,
the reopening safety plan with the 12/11/2020 revisions.
I'll second.
okay. And I think the point is it's fairly short time since we've seen it. If anybody has any issues with it or any questions, we can bring them up Saturday morning. Okay. Any further comments or questions? If not, anybody opposed to approving this motion? Okay, motion carries. Okay, anything else, Jill?
Not at this time.
Okay. Let's go through the liaison reports. Friends of the Library, Liz.
Hi. So first of all, I have to say, Brent and Allie, our new co-chairs, book sale chairs, I'm so in love with them. I can't even tell you. And I love Mary. I loved Linda, but they are just like a breath of fresh air and they're so eager and they have just jumped in with both feet and it's just wonderful. We had our grab and go book sale out of the shed on a very damp and rainy Saturday, the 5th, and we made $232 of people buying books that they couldn't even pick out. It was amazing. The bag, Betty was there. Thank you, Betty. I hope you like your bag full. And we want to do it again. And we're talking about starting to carefully take donations. So, Jill, I know that's been a big question of people, and want to make sure that we're following those same guidelines that you're following in terms of returns and, quarantining things and such. But it's just, they're just great. So we're planning on having another grab and go book sale. Not sure exactly when just yet, because even though the holidays are going to be different this year, they're still the holidays. So it'll probably be sometime in early to mid-January that we do it. But the raffle again seems to be going well in terms of people buying tickets and whatnot. So that ends this coming Saturday or Friday. I think we said we were going to do the drawing. So if that keeps up with the same interest, I think we'll try to do, I don't know that we would necessarily do it every month, because I think that would lead to raffle fatigue, but maybe we would have some sort of a spring raffle, maybe February or March, to get people thinking spring thoughts or whatever, and not necessarily tied to a holiday or whatever. But Betty, I thank you again for getting us started, because I think it's really been well received. And it certainly seems like people are buying up tickets as fast as they can. So I appreciate that you got us started.
People are
Who did the
excited.
second one?
Me. I did.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, yeah. Well, you led the charge. I was happy to pick up the baton and keep it going. So.
Well, I bought my tickets. It'll solve my Christmas gifts if I win.
Okay. So yeah, I'm looking forward to transitioning to just being the treasurer, and Charlie is, working on some stuff. We sent out our end of year donation letter. Watch your mailboxes, and that should be coming your way any day now. I think that's all I have.
Okay,
Thanks.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Where's Holly? There's Holly. Holly, you're on. Holly, you gotta unmute yourself. Holly. You're muted, Holly. Can't hear me. Holly?
Looks like she's frozen.
No, she's
She's
moving.
moving a little bit.
No, it says here for me to mute her. Usually it says for me to unmute someone. So something funky is happening. Holly, if you can hear us, I would suggest you call in.
See, her mouth just moved.
Here.
There
How's
you
that?
are. That's much better.
Yay! Okay. Phew. High technology. Hi. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I just did want to say goodbye to Betty. I'll miss you. I really did enjoy. I liked working with you so much, and thank you. I'm sorry I won't be seeing you every month. So what's going on in the town? Well, right now we have a couple of holiday events that are going on for the next few days, and if anyone's an East Greenbush resident, they can still sign up for the holiday home lighting contest. We'll be judging over the weekend. So far, we have about 30 homes, families that have signed up to participate in the outdoor holiday lighting contest. We also have a mailbox in front of the town hall, letters to Santa. And the letters are mailed to the North Pole, and the families or the children will be getting a response from Santa, and that's going through next Tuesday. And also on the 18th, our police department is joining with our community services staff to deliver meals to senior citizens who have signed up, who either have been participating in our programs or they have a need for a full course meal on Friday. And the food is being donated by a restaurant in Albany, the Stella de Mar. Really good. So that's happening on Friday. We have I talked with you guys last week or last month about our proposed comprehensive plan that the board has now. It's still in draft form, but it's pretty final. We have a public hearing scheduled for January 13th. It's a public hearing to accept comments from the public on the proposed comp plan as it stands right now. It is you can find it on our town website if you would like to participate, read it, offer any comments. And we also have our town organizational meeting on January 4th for 2021. That's where we finalize positions, salaries, organization of the town, all of the departments, appointments, and things like that. And I also want to wish everyone a happy holiday and a happy new year. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to share.
Holly, are the
Well,
town
thank you.
offices open again, or?
The town office building is shut down.
Yes.
It's not open at all, not to anyone, not to the staff or the public right now, for at least
Now-
for the rest of this week.
I saw two
I'm not sure when
positives. I saw two
Yeah,
positives
there's been a
and
few
some of them were
people who-
tested. Anybody else?
There's been a few people who have tested positive, or family members. So right now, it's definitely shut for the rest of this week, and I'm not sure about next week yet.
Yeah, you get into the depths of the holiday next week, so.
Yeah, probably will stay. My guess is it will probably stay closed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Anybody have anything else for Holly? If not, Tom,
Tom.
do we wake up?
There I am, unmuted, right?
Yes, you are
Yep.
unmuted. We can hear you.
I'm doing much better than Holly did on that. Thank you very much. It's good to know.
You were
Hey,
looking like you were-
I'm shocked because you are older than me, so.
Well, yeah, wisdom comes with age, right? Yeah.
you were looking like you were snoozing in your chair.
No, my phone is not charging. I had to reach over. It's a whole story. You don't want to know it yet. The county passed the budget unanimously. Slight tax decrease. We're having a pretty, obviously everybody realizes this on an individual level, significant COVID surge here in the county. Part of the reason behind it, I think, is when our contact tracers reach out to people who have been identified as perhaps having a risk of getting COVID. The individuals who respond to contact tracers have not been completely candid. So we're seeing some clusters in certain areas that are of concern. We're trying to stay on top of it the best we can. On a more pleasant note, on behalf of the county legislature, we'd like to thank Betty and Kevin for their years of productive service to the community, particularly the library board. We thank you for everything you've done and hopefully continue to do once your time on the board ends up. Only thing I'd say is just stay safe. Do what Jill is suggesting, what the library is doing is regarding the safety plan. Don't rush into anything, particularly during the holiday season. It's, the stakes are high. There's some positive news, obviously, at the national level regarding now multiple vaccines. Let's hang in there until we can get the vaccines, and just be careful. Take good care of everybody. Thank you. And again, happy holiday season to everyone too.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Upper Hudson. There was no meeting this month, so Jill, you're closer to them than I am. I did see a report on the news this morning. First news, Albany, Schenectady, and Troy are basically shut down except for curb service. Is Upper Hudson still continuing?
Upper Hudson is still continuing delivery right now. We are hoping to, no matter what, continue the delivery service. A lot of libraries are hoping to continue curbside service and not completely shut down. So there are a lot of libraries are rolling back services right now, fairly significantly. Some libraries never reopened, and so they're rethinking that. There's been some safety concerns that have happened at some libraries, and there's one library in our system that is under construction right now, and there's a lot of frustration between the staff and the staff union and the board, and it's been very public. You can read about that with the Gilgillen Public Library. So that's been something that we have, discussed among the directors, and it's as someone who's gone through a building project and also through COVID, it's a very challenging situation. But there's a lot of unrest there happening right now. In terms of what's happening at Upper Hudson right now, delivery quarantines have changed to 72 hours from 96 hours. That has been the recommendation based on a lot of the science that we've received on how the virus spreads. And Upper Hudson is no longer quarantining materials at their end. They're just expecting all the libraries to quarantine materials at the libraries themselves.
Jill, can I ask, they're not quarantining at their end.
Right.
But is the quarantining we're doing before we bring things in either to us or send to them is the only quarantine? We're not going to start quarantining stuff we receive from Upper Hudson again, are we?
No. Right before, we were double quarantining essentially, because not all of the libraries were quarantining. Some of the smaller libraries were not interested in quarantining materials right away, so Upper Hudson was quarantining to be sure, and that was, back when it seemed in the beginning that a lot of the virus was spread on surfaces and not airborne. We were very concerned about materials, and quarantining was a big piece of that. It seems like that's less of an issue right now. The delivery process in itself has several days involved before it gets from place to place, so there's a built-in kind of quarantine with that. And next year, starting in January, the delivery service will change. We will still be getting 5 days of delivery, but the smaller libraries will not be getting 5 days of delivery because they have a 20+% budget cut from the state. The majority of their funding is state funding. So that will impact us as well. So we're trying to also look at a balancing service. It remains to be seen how that will impact us The majority of the libraries that are filling things are the larger libraries, so hopefully it's not going to impact us too much. There have been some cuts to some of the databases and different things in the Upper Hudson budget that we will be experiencing. Hoopla is being cut, so now it's going back to the library's budget. Ancestry, that was something that the library subscribed to previously, and now we are going to have to subscribe to that again. So there's some budget cuts that we will be absorbing.
Okay. Okay, shall we continue moving through this? We have no personnel memo. Jill, just confirming?
Correct.
And I don't have any old or new business updates at this point. The only thing being, I had Jill add in here an executive session. Reason being, Lou has confirmed that he is moving to Skodak. I spoke with him today. And one question is does he want to go through with the, getting sworn in as a full trustee in January when he's going to be leaving in February, or does he want to drop out now and resign? If he gets sworn in, it's sort of, we follow one set of rules. I don't know, we may follow the same set of rules. If he doesn't, I think that's something, I've spoken to a few of our trustees and gotten some different opinions. And so I think it's something we need to discuss, how we go about replacing Lou. And that's what I'd like to move into executive session if we can. Unless anybody has something else.
Happy holidays, everybody. Take care.
Okay. Happy holidays. Thank you, Betty.
Bye.
Bye.
So I'd say Jill, Tammy, you stay.
I'm gonna get out of here.
I'm just going to walk on now, but you guys can start
Okay.
talking without.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We still have Holly here.
I'm trying to get out. There we go.
Bye, Holly. Have a good holiday. Dawn is still here. 1, 2, 3, Jill, Bob. Eileen is left on. She'll turn that off. Shay. Holly is still here with us.
I'm trying to find the leave the meeting icon. Sorry.
That's okay. Should be right next to it.
The camera.
Well, we got to wait for Jill to come back because I don't know that we should be recording this.
Oh.
Well, I just found out an hour ago my sister has COVID.
Really?
Sorry.
So I'm sorry if I'm a little distracted. She's been sick for about a week, really.
Let's hope she has a mild case.
Well, it hasn't been so far, but she's not in the hospital yet, but she did go to the hospital today. And yeah.
Is she local?
No, she lives in New
Cleveland?
Hampshire.
Okay.
So Yeah,
So sorry, Lynn.
I know. It's just worrisome.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And it's worse now than it was during the pause.
And she's funny because she's pretty, I mean, you know, she lives with her husband, she works at home, she's literally done nothing more than wear a mask to a grocery store in months. So she has no idea, how she could have gotten it.
Wow.
But
And what does her husband do?
he's retired.
So he's done the same thing.
He's done the same thing. I mean, I will add, they're building a house. So he actually has contact with contractors because he's kind of the general contractor. So he's been more exposed than she has for sure to people. But I don't know. Sort of scary.
Yeah.
It is a mystery. You just never know where you could get it. And, you know, my husband and I say the same thing. We, from the very beginning of this, we've both been, you know, just going about our lives. And certainly Kevin has never stayed home a day. And he's been working and had closings and has been around people. And I've been in my office and grocery store and I mean, you just don't know. And then you hear this where someone's basically been staying home. I just feel like I'm like one person away from, you know, getting it. I don't know how I haven't gotten it by now. I mean,
well, yeah,
I went back to church. I'm just trying to think of places I've been that I said, well, I'm gonna get it.
When the cases were so slight, the odds of encountering somebody were very slim. As the number of cases increases, the odds increase. Jill, can you stop the recording?
Oh.
Oops.